Jamie, we good? Good afternoon and welcome to the December and last Public Works Committee meeting of the year. In attendance, we have Councilmember John Larson via Zoom, Councilmember Annette Scipio, and Vice Chair Barbara Haynes-Burke. Are there any items on the consent agenda that we would like to pull for further discussion? I don't see anyone. I would like to.
Agenda.
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, I would like to pull C4 just to give Dr. Miller a chance to elaborate on this if she would care to.
Good, okay. Remainder of the ballot, remainder of the budget.
Good afternoon.
Agenda.
Oh,
Yeah, motion to approve.
okay,
balance.
sorry. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, we're going to voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. So now, Dr. Miller, if you would be so kind.
Item C4, ordinance approving an amendment to Chapter 2, Article 3 of the City Code, adding Division 18 to codify the bylaws of the Community Sustainability Program Committee.
Great. Thank you. And if you'd just give us a quick rundown on why this item is in front of us.
All right, thank you, Chairman McIntosh, committee members. This request is to add Community Sustainability Program Committee bylaws into City Code. As the committee was formed by resolution, the bylaws were not in Municode, and although the committee has been operating by Robert's Rules of Orders regarding quorum, the legal has advised us to go ahead and codify these items. Overall, the committee bylaws remain the same, and where it's modified has been to align with other advisory boards and commissions. In particular, it allows the committee to elect a chair and vice chair and set its own meeting schedule, whether it's monthly or quarterly. And this allows the committee to have continuity in terms of leadership instead of waiting for council to reappoint a chair. And it allows the committee not to meet at certain times, such as the holidays. One other change was to appointments in order to increase memberships. Since we've had several vacancies, it removes ward appointment and allows the mayor's office to appoint a diverse board, but not follow strictly by ward. At this time, we have 4 vacancies and are often unable to mark quorum. It also fits with the original 2008 committee structure.
Great. Any further questions for Dr. Miller? If not, could I get a motion for approval?
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. By a voice vote, could we say aye or nay?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Okay, moving on to our vast general agenda.
Item G1, update regarding Winston-Salem, Forsyth County utilities.
Thank you. Ms. Driver, you here to update us on this, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Is it up there yet? Yes, okay,
lost
thank you.
sound.
So just
At
use
your
the clicker
leisure.
here. Let me see. No. You'll change your, okay. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. So again, good afternoon. I'm going to present several topics that are big topics for utilities, but I'm going to attempt to keep it high level so we're not here all afternoon. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. I'll try now. Okay, perfect. So as most of you know, we had an incident at our biosolids drying facility on November the 9th. We had an explosion that occurred that caused damage to the building as well as some of the equipment in that facility. There was no fire, so it was just an explosion, and there were no injuries, which is a good thing. Evidence is being examined by the fire department, the insurance company, equipment manufacturers, our staff, as well as the design engineer of the facility, to determine the exact cause of the failure. The wastewater treatment plant at both Muddy Creek and at our Elledge wastewater treatment facility were not impacted, so we are still able to treat wastewater. And the process to make the repairs and put the drying facility back into service, we anticipate is going to be 12 to 18 months. So it is going to be down for a significant amount of time. And just to explain to you what a drying facility does, so there's sludge that's left over from the wastewater treatment process. And that sludge enters into a centrifuge to dewater, and it turns it into what we call cake in our industry, in the wastewater business, cake. And so then this drying facility takes that cake and converts it into small pellets that are categorized as, by the EPA as a Class A soil amendment. So we sell those pellets to a farmer that they use for fertilizer. So obviously, while the facility is out of service, we cannot sell those pellets. And so in the interim, we'll be hauling that cake to our Haynes Mill Road landfill or any other facility that we find during the time that it's out of service. And you can go to the next slide. I'll just show you a couple of pictures. So up in the top left-hand corner, that's a picture of inside the facility when it was built in 2008, so brand new. Then you can see other pictures after the event occurred, some of the damage where the explosion happened, and some of the damage that resulted from that. Same thing on this next slide, so just a few pictures. Okay, moving along to the next topic, so PFAS compounds. So most of you have heard it in the media, also known as forever chemicals. The term PFAS actually encompasses over 4,700 substances. So they're widely used, long-lasting chemicals which break down very slowly over time. Again, they're widespread in the environment, being present in air, water, food, soil, products. They're used in the manufacturing of products such as nonstick cooking surfaces, firefighting foams, dental floss, mattresses, rain gear coatings, stain-resistant coatings that you would find on carpet and furniture. So again, really widespread throughout the environment. So in March of this year, so earlier this year, the EPA proposed new regulations regarding 6 PFAS chemicals. So they set a maximum contaminant level of 4 parts per trillion for PFOS, 4 parts per trillion for PFAS. They set health index for 4 compounds, also commonly referred to as Gen X. And just to give you an idea of what a part per trillion is, the size of it, 1 part per trillion is approximately 30 seconds in 1 million years. So it's a very, very small amount that we're being regulated to.
Can I ask a question there?
Sure.
Can you measure that precisely?
We can to a certain level. We do have instruments that can, but once it gets so low, it'll be non-detects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
'Cause, I mean, 1 part per trillion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very small amount.
But we can test to the requirement.
Yeah. So public comment period ended in May of this year, and the EPA anticipates publishing the final rule by the end of 2023, but that has not happened yet. So we anticipate the final rule coming out anytime, so we're ready for it. Based on the historical sampling data that we started in 2018 and the most recent data from the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule that we have to abide by, all of our samples have been non-detect for the regulated compounds in our water system. So we feel confident that we'll be able to meet the new regulations once they're final.
This is a big topic in D.C. When we
Yes,
were up
very
at
big.
the National League of Cities Conference last year.
Yes.
There was a big buzz around this, and a lot of communities are faced with a significant dollar expenditure because they have not sort of had those kind of abilities in place.
Yes, fortunately for us, we, as it stands right now, we have not had the same troubles and challenges that some other utilities have faced, but there are a lot of other utilities, even in North Carolina, that have had significant capital expenditures to try to meet these new regulations, and even, they've had challenges to try to get this out of the drinking water.
And we don't have the industry upstream from us that cities like Wilmington.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So next topic, another big kind of regulatory thing for our department is the lead and copper rule. Just to give you a little bit of history, the original lead and copper rule was promulgated by the EPA in January of 1991, and it is the only rule that requires sampling from inside customer homes. In response to that rule in 1991, utilities began a corrosion control program in March of 1992 to prevent lead leaching in our pipes. And since that original rule came out, there's been several minor revisions. We have maintained an excellent compliance history with the original rule and all the revisions since then. We're developing a lead and copper compliance program right now to ensure continued compliance with the requirements of the revisions that went into effect in 2021. So next slide. So just a little bit about what's happened recently with the revisions of 2021. So in January 15th, 2021, the lead and copper rule revisions were promulgated, and then they became effective later that year in December. Just as of last week, there's been more revisions, which they're calling improvements to the lead and copper rule revisions. They're actually out for public comment right now. So we're still trying to digest all those, all the new language and all the new proposed regulations. I'll get into a little bit of that on the next slide. The old compliance date with the 2021 revisions would have been October 16th of 2024. We anticipate the new compliance date by the time they do the public comment period and publish the new rule, it would be towards the end of 2027. Just what the rule, kind of an overview of the rule. Of course, we have to do an annual service line inventory and update that to the public, make that available to the public. This includes both public and private side lines. We have to update our lead and copper rule compliance monitoring plan, so the sampling of the selected homes. There's a full lead replacement nationwide in 10 years. So this is something that's new that just came out last week. The revisions of 2021 said that you had to replace 3% of the lead service lines found, and that was only triggered if you hit the level above 15 parts per billion. But now it's a complete change out. So if we find a lead service line, we need to complete it, and we have to do that within 10 years. The rule does not say that a utility has to fund that. And so just as a reminder, this is lead service lines that are on private property going up to the dwelling. It's really outside of our public system. So the EPA is not requiring that the utilities pay for that. However, they're strongly recommending that. So our utility, as well as other utilities, have to determine, do we absorb those costs in our rate structure? Do we come up with some kind of financial plan, of payment arrangements with individual customers that we find those lead service lines? So those are all things that we've got to think through and work, how we're going to handle that. The other language that was revised just as of last week, they changed the lead action level from 15 parts per billion to 10. A carryover from 2021 was school and child care list. We have to have a list of that and a sampling plan. Of course, we have to have public education and outreach material, and then we have to submit to our primacy agency for approval. And as I mentioned, we anticipate that we'll have until the end of 2027 to be in compliance. But as you know, we're already working on that program and doing our sampling and our inventory and trying to get ahead of the new regulations.
Do we know which houses have lead service lines?
We do not. However, we have found some in our sampling. So out of 150, that we've sampled, we have found some. But it is, other than some of it's going to be based on data, and if you're in a neighborhood that was built during this certain time period and you find lead service lines, then maybe we dig a little bit more in this area. But so we know of some, but we do not know of all of them, and that will be a challenge to try to determine.
Okay, so let's say you find that my house has one, and am I required to replace it? Can you make me replace it?
So That's a good question, and I'm glad Angela's hearing this because this will be all these
This
conversations.
is theoretical. Of course I would, but
Yeah, but you're right. So what we understand from the new rule that came out last week is that we have to make 4 attempts to property owners using 2 different methods to ask them to, replace these lines. So I don't think we can require it. And I guess if they just absolutely say no, we still have to just update them annually. Hey, remember you've got this lead service line. But again, it's probably going to go back to, what the utility decides to do as far as how to fund that, and I'm hoping that there's going to be federal funding available to help with this cost as well.
do we have any idea how many potential?
Based off the sampling that we did, and I hate to throw out numbers, but we think maybe 5%. So it's not an overwhelming amount, but we're thinking, maybe 5%.
Out of what?
We have
100,000?
130,000 connections.
So that would,
137,000 connections.
that would be 6,000, maybe, something like that. Okay, thank you.
Just a question, during, there are eras of construction where, aluminum Romex lines were used. What era of construction were lead pipes common? Do you know?
Yeah, so it's 50s, it's 60s, it was in the 80s, and it changed over time, but I'd say it's going to impact a lot of the older homes in our community.
Yeah, okay. And I would be surprised, but is there any sort of a ballpark guess of overall costs? Yeah.
No, not at this point. And I mean, it really is going to depend. Each situation is going to be different because it may be a short service line, it may be a long service line,
Right.
So yeah, we don't really have an idea of what that cost is going to be yet.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
The service lines that you're speaking of, are they the lines from the street into the house, or are they also the piping that's in the house?
Well, so for us, it's from the street to the house. And so we would, and I've had conversations with other utilities in the state from Raleigh. We're talking about what they're going to do, Charlotte. And the idea is that we would go from the street to probably, 5 foot inside the dwelling, some point where there's some kind of control valve where you can kind of make that separation, but we would not be responsible for replacing all the plumbing inside the house. That would be a huge endeavor. I mean, it's already going to be enough to go to the house, but.
Because I know there are some houses that I know of that I've seen the metal piping, because it's in a basement
Yeah.
area, so you can see the metal piping. So would it be prudent just to ask residents if they have that piping to contact utilities so that they can get it tested?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. So we will be, and we already have been, we've been communicating with some homeowners have gotten individual letters to try to help us and give us permission. But we've kind of soft launched a website where homeowners can go in and self-report, and we've got, some visuals, some pictures of what certain types of pipe would look like, because not everybody knows exactly what they're looking at. And so there's some tutorials on there, and they'll be able to go in and submit information themselves. So yes.
So metal piping doesn't have to be lead. It could be
Yeah, right.
galvanized or other.
Could be galvanized, right. So, but there's a lot of, but again, like we have pictures to kind of help homeowners identify exactly what they have.
Is that on our website?
Yes.
On utilities
Yes.
website? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Moving right
Okay.
along.
Okay, so next up is vacancy report. And so this goes back to 2018. And historically, utilities has always had some amount of vacancies, but we peaked in, 2022, 2023. We had gotten up to about over 90 vacancies out of less than 400 positions. But I'm happy to report that even since this graph was included in your packet, we're down to 60 vacancies, which is still a lot, but we're making a lot of progress. Our staff, and as well as HR, have been working really hard to advertise and promote and interview and advertise and promote and interview. Seems like we just keep on doing it. It's like a never-ending cycle, but we are making progress.
Good trend line there.
Yes.
What's a UFO?
UFO is our utilities field operations, so the field crews, the field staff.
In this context.
And they're the red, and yeah,
I guess I was really worried there for a minute.
yeah, they like being called UFO. But it's the red, and they are where we have most of our vacancies. Construction crews, things like that. Okay. Excellent.
Is there a lot of technical knowledge that the UFOs need to have that impacts why we have vacancies there?
Well, there's technical knowledge. There's equipment operators. I mean, I know you've heard that division has the most equipment operators, and there's a shortage of that. But we have engineering technicians, GIS technicians, some administrative type positions. So there is a variety of positions in that group. But I would say that most of them are equipment operators and crew supervisors. Okay, next is active projects, capital projects. We have 48 active capital projects, so we have a lot. 26 are in design, 5 are in bidding, 17 are in construction, and we spent last year roughly $79 million on capital projects, and we estimate that we'll spend around $97 million this year. So we do fund a lot of capital improvements or projects to make improvements to our infrastructure, and obviously to meet all the regulatory requirements that we have to do. So, okay. And we really would be here all day if I talked to you about all 48 of those projects, so I'll only talk to you about one, and this one impacts every customer that we have. It's our AMI project, where we will be replacing all water meters with remote meters that they can be read remotely. You can see we've installed roughly 46,000 out of 136, almost 137,000 meters that we have to install or replace. And down at the bottom, you can see the schedule that we've been working on. We're right now under full deployment, and we anticipate to have all of our meters replaced by the end of 2025. And I think there's one more slide, but it's still just a project status map, and the blue dots are areas where we've replaced those meters so far. And I think that's it. Yeah. So,
Okay.
sorry for all the kind of a wide range of topics, but
You've got a fair amount of topics to cover. So. Questions for Ms. Driver? Councilmember Scipio. And Councilmember Larson after that.
I think the solid waste is very interested, and to call it cake is really humorous.
I know.
But you mentioned that you sell the cake for commercial use. Is it at all possible for the cake to be used residentially?
That's a good question. The problem is it's such a large volume that it's just not something that we can really administer, and we can't, and because it's categorized as a Class A, we're limited on exactly what we can do to it. So there's two things: the way it's classified, it's like, and the fact that it's just such a large volume. The fact that we just have one farmer that comes and gets it all is really to our benefit.
It's a wholesale operation, not
Yeah.
retail.
So it's not like leaf collection that I can come and get
Yeah.
a couple of bags of it. And
Yeah, we're not really set up to do that, I guess.
Other questions? Councilmember Larson.
Courtney, thank you very much for an informative briefing. They're always fascinating to see what's going on down in utilities. I do have one question, though, in that regard, the linkage between copper and lead. You talked a lot about lead abatement and concerns and problems with lead water pipes and what have you. Not much discussion about copper. What is the copper component dealing with? What are we dealing with there?
There's not a lot that's kind of I mean, it's the lead and copper rule, and we still meet all the requirements of that piece of the rule. But you're right; it's been more focused on the lead piece here recently.
I mean, a lot of people have substituted their lead pipes with copper pipes over the years, and in the rehabilitation and renovation of spaces, and I don't, some of them are going to, PVC pipes and whatever, which may not be any better environmentally for off gassing and what have you. I'm just curious of what the thought is on copper recently as far as environmentally and water quality.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that we are still meeting the requirements of the rule, and so there are those levels on the copper side, that we have to meet. But so I'm not saying there's not a concern there, but we're meeting those limits, and the main concern right now is the lead service lines. So there's been a lot of focus on that, and I'll follow up with my staff on that just to try to get you some more detail, and I can share that with you.
I'm just curious if we're recommending some alternative. People that are building houses right now, obviously are not putting lead pipe in, but they are putting copper in. And I guess I'm trying to understand what the safe alternatives are, if people should be concerned about that at all.
Okay. Yes, I'll look into that and follow up with you.
What
Councilmember Clark.
Best practices are currently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I think it would be good to try to come up with at least an order of magnitude of what it would cost, because we do have relationships with Washington. We have a good lobbyist up there, and we need to be able to tell them X amount of money is what you're talking about.
Right.
I just, if it's 6,000 houses and if it's 3,000 a house, that's $18 million. So
Yeah, that's,
just order of magnitude or something, because that's the first question a congressman or a senator's going to ask, well, how much
Right.
money do you need?
right.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but that would fall under your enterprise status. That would not be an expense that hits the city
Yes.
budget. That
Yes.
would be
If we, the utility, the city decide to, take that expense on and not charge that back to the homeowners, then yes, it would fall under the enterprise, water and sewer enterprise fund.
which you could potentially bond out some of that.
Yes, so I mean, it would just be like any capital project that we would have. We'd pay for either through PAYGO or revenue bonds.
Okay. I've got a question about the budget impact, again, to your side, but not to ours, of the explosion. Any initial thoughts on that?
So there has been some conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of expense. There's additional expense now for hauling the cake to the landfill. So there's tipping fees at the landfill, even though the landfills fall under utilities, it's still a separate enterprise fund, so there's charging each other. So there's that expense. If we have to get in there and replace the drum unit, that's $900,000 by itself. So I don't have an overall fine. I think it might be in the ballpark about $5 million when it's all said and done. We do have insurance that is covering some of the equipment, our hauling expenses, lost revenue from the pellet cells. So
Building had some damage as well.
yes, yeah. There's structurally the building's fine, which is good, but there were, as you saw, there was some windows that got blown out and things of that nature.
All right. Courtney, as always, very thorough. Yes, Scipio.
Just to be clear, the lead and copper issue, the city does not have an issue with lead and copper contamination when we test our water leaving our plants.
Correct. We have, go ahead, sorry.
And so if there is an issue that may develop, it may be coming at the resident level from piping that goes into the home, correct?
Yes. So the issue is going to be the lead service lines that serve individual homes.
Yes.
So we don't really have the lead service lines in our system. We've replaced all those. And so, yeah, but again, there is our water's passing through their service line. But I will just remind you that we have been in compliance of the rule since its inception. Up until now, we've always had, met the levels, and will continue to do that. But I think what I'm reading from federal level is that they just want to get lead out of the system altogether. So even if we don't necessarily have an issue, it's like we're going to get it all gone.
Because we're the entity that can accomplish it instead of the
Right.
general public.
Right.
So is there an at-home kit that residents can use to test their water?
I would recommend that they contact us and let us test it. Anybody can call, and we would be happy to test their water. And they can call CityLink and make that request.
And so they bring the water to your facility?
We go out, we provide them with the test kit, and we give them instructions on how to collect that sample and exactly what to do, and then we bring it back to our labs and process it.
Is there a cost?
No.
Oh, so we could just ask residents to bring their water in and have it tested, and then we'll know whether or not this house may have some lead piping going on.
Right.
That's easy, okay.
Jamie, can we go back to slide 10? The one that shows the graphic of the piping.
Oh, down on the bottom.
Yeah.
The little graphic, the house.
Yeah, there you go.
That one, yeah.
So from a legal standpoint, I mean, we put the structures in up to where it shows water main, right? The gooseneck from there to the house typically is done by a private party, non-governmental.
Correct.
So when a problem occurs, a break in the line or whatever, if it's on the gooseneck to the house, that's the responsibility of the owner.
So technically, we are responsible for the water main, so that blue dot, the circle that says water main. As a courtesy, we have maintained this private service line within the right-of-way, so that where you see that property line, that white dash line,
Right.
we have always, as a courtesy, even though it's technically a private service line, we've maintained in that, because you have to have a utilities contractor's license to work in the right-of-way, and plumbers, not all plumbers have that. So yeah, I think if that answers your question. But anything behind that right-of-way line, and normally the right-of-way line either has a clean-out on the sewer side or a water meter on the water side. So anything behind that would be the customer's responsibility.
And one of the reasons for that is that we did not install it, so therefore we're not, we don't know essentially what's been done.
Exactly.
Newer construction where we instituted, more intense inspections, we can have
Right.
more impact on that. But
Right.
in this case, because the federal government is saying so, we're looking at that whole system all the way up, further beyond that into the house.
Right. That's correct. And that's a good point, too. So we don't have that information in our database. So that's why we don't know, back to the original earlier question, we don't necessarily know the material type for every single dwelling or business. And again, to your point, we are trying to work with inspections now moving forward that we're capturing that data, even though it's technically not part of our system.
Okay, if there's nothing else, again, thank you for a wonderful report. You always do a good job on this. We appreciate it. And if there's nothing further, we shall adjourn.